hey ya, hey ya, hey yo, hey hey da, hey ya, yo, hey yo, hey. Hey, Loshka, Skuna, Umbana, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, ya, hey, ya, yo, hey, oh, hey, ya, hey, ya, yo, hey, hey, da, hey, da, yo. Hey, oh, hey, da, hey, yo, hey, ya, da, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, da, hey, ya, yo, hey, hey, Loshka, Skunda, Mana, ya. Hey oh, hey oh, hey da, hey ya, that was a song shared to me by a Ponca friend of mine out in Oklahoma, and I just wanted to kind of sing that and bring that energy and that feeling here on a good Saturday morning here in the urban area of New York. Again, my name is John Scott Richardson. I'm an enrolled member of the Haliwa-Saponi people. We are one of the communities in Eastern North Carolina. We are the third largest tribal community there. And I just wanted to kind of share with you one of the interesting stories that was shared with me a long time ago by an elder from the Cherokee, the Sagali community. His name is Mr. Lloyd Arnich. He is a storyteller, a language, still speaks the community language, as well as a artist and carver. But he's really an amazing storyteller. And so one of the stories I wanted to share, and this is his daughter, also Dawn Arnich. They live down in the Koala boundary, down in the western part of North Carolina. And so the story is about the first fire. Okay, a long time ago, we think about how the planet, the earth, was barren and did not have anything except water, right? The whole planet was full of water. And through different things, the creator looked down through the heavens and said, you know, things look kind of empty and plain, and he wanted to create certain things, right? So he created small land masses and things that rose up in the water, and then inhabited all of that with the animals, right? And this was a time when animals were brothers and sisters, and they could all speak with each other and talk with one another. And one day the creator said, well, things still look pretty good, but you know, it's still kind of plain. And I want to try something. So he sent down a bolt of lightning, and lightning struck a tree that had been growing on an island out in the water. And there was fire from that lightning. And the creator said, wow, this is good. You know, that is the spark that we all have, right? That's that divine spark. So in that fire was burning in that tree. And so the animals on the land, they were, you know, trying to figure out how they could go get that fire, because everything was so cold. All right, it was water all around and wind and things, but everything was so cold, and that fire had a glow. It drew you to it. If you ever been around fire, you know, you see it, you want to go and get close to it, because it is a connection. It's something that is inside of us. It is part of the element that is part of all of us, right? So how the key was that for the animals, how are we going to get this fire back here to warm us, right? To give us light. And so the animals looked around at each other and said, well, maybe the owl the owl said, I'll go and try. Right? So the owl flew, and it's one of a swift, fast flying bird that can fly with virtually no sound. It's like can move through the forest, making no sound. It flew through the winds and through out there to that tree, and it sat on that tree and tried to sit there and figure out how to get that fire back to the other land where the other animals were. And all of a sudden, when it landed, the breath of its wings, it pushed up a big puff of smoke, and it didn't scar the owl, but it smudged the owl, right? It made the owl could not get that close to it. And its face became colored in a certain way that it shows that smut and that smoke from that fire, and the rings around its eyes because of that, when its wind from the wings blew that smoke back up. So the owl could not get close enough because it was too hot, right? So owl flew back, disappointed and sad, and said, I can't do it, and now I look like this. Okay. So then stood up the bear. Okay. And the bears, bear was a great swimmer. Bears can swim. People forget that bears are great swimmers, right? So the bear jumps in the water and starts to swim, fighting the current to get there and get there. And then the bear got there to the island, and it got near the tree, and it tried to get near that fire that was in that tree, and it covered itself. It pumped itself as squares in there. And all of a sudden it was too hot, and the bear couldn't get close enough either. And it singed the bear's hair. So now the bear in North Carolina that's why they're called the black bear, because they are dark. Their hair is dark, and it reminds us of how they were trying to get close to that fire to bring that fire back. And it was unsuccessful. So he jumps in the water and swims back and gets back, and everybody sees that the bears changed colors. It's no longer brown or light tan. It's dark and black. And it's like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get this fire back? So everybody kept looking around. Now we went to the swiftest for help, and we went to the strongest for help. Now, who is going to get this fire back? And you hear this little voice saying, I'll do it. I'll do it. And everybody's looking around, and all the animals are whispering and talking. It's like, who is that talking? Who is that saying they will do it? And they looked down, and it was the little water spider. The little water spider said, I'll do it. I'll bring the fire back. And everybody's like, oh, you're too small. You can't bring that hot fire back. How are you going to be able to do this? A little water spider said, don't worry, I can do it. And so everybody sits and watches this little water spider. And the water spider jumps in the water, and it dances its way all the way out to that island, all the way out to where that fire is, just dancing on the water, right? And some people think, okay, I'm dancing, it's a show, but this is all part of how all of our creatures have special, and all of our brothers and sisters have special gifts, right? And no matter how they deliver these gifts, this is the magic that's inside of all of us. So that water spider goes out there, and it gets there, and it's sitting on the land, and it's down, and it's looking at the fire, and it's trying to figure out how to bring this fire back to the people and the animals. And so it's sitting there, and it says, I know what I'll do. I'll spin a web. So it took a web, and it just spun a web to make like a bowl, right? This shaped thing that holds something. It spun a web, and it said, well, the web will get burned if I put it close to the fire because it's hot. So I'll take some mud. So it scraped up a little bit of mud, and it coated its bowl of web with a little bit of coating of mud. And it crept in there, and it kicked one of those coals over from the fire into its bowl. And as it danced its way back across the water to bring that coal of fire back to the people, in that process, that web and the mud became very hard and it got burned and it really got hard. But it was able to bring that coal back and bring it to the people. And it gave each clan leader, the 7 clans of the Cherokee people, a piece of that coal to keep that fire for the families and the communities of those 7 clans that came from the Cherokee people. And that, but if to this day, if you look at the back of a water spider, it has a little bit of white ash or a smudge of ash or something white on its back. And that is to remind us of the task that the water spider did. And it also, in the Cherokee pottery, is how they learned to make pottery, because that heat from that coal spun with that mud and that web spinning of what the water spider had done is how they learned to make pottery, right? So and these stories are similar and they vary in different ways here and there, but there are lessons in all of these stories to be learned. And you have to remember that no matter how big or how small or how weak you may feel, or even how strong you may feel, that everyone, every animal, every person, everything, every plant, every element has a place in this great creation, right? And we can work with all of these things in creation together so that everything can be sustained, right? So this is the thing that we think about when we think about this story, and we think about how wonderful it is that the little water spider brought fire back. And if you think about that fire, right? Fire is in all of us. It is one of the elements that is in all of us, just like air, just like water, and just like the earth. These are all the elements, right, that is in us. And if you think about that coal, that spark, right, that is also in us. A spark is given to us at the beginning of our creation, when our soul and our bodies come together. That spark, that light, that energy, that divine spark from Creator is in us. It is the source of energy that is in us that will stay with us until we leave this body. Right now, it is being confined because it is in the body. But if once it leaves the body, it will travel, it will continue on, and it will give itself back to the source as well as give itself back to the land. It will continue on, right? And that is how our people been able to survive all these years, because we remember these stories. We remember these lessons that have been taught to us from our brothers and sisters, the swimming ones, the creepy crawling ones, the flying ones, the ones that walk on 4 legs, and the ones that can walk on 2. We remember these stories because they all connect us. They connect us in a beautiful, profound way. Sometimes it looks very chaotic, right? When you're walking through the jungle doesn't look organized, right? It doesn't look intellectually separated and sectioned, like this tree is here and that tree is there and this tree is over here. It looks like a whole lot of chaos. But guess what? That wilderness or that jungle or that forest works in a very unique, mysterious way, and it is a highly organized organism, right? And that is how it's able to sustain itself and to sustain life and to create life and to give life, right? Because it creates oxygen, it creates fuel, it creates food, it creates all of these things. And we're all connected to that. We're all part of that beautiful, unorganized, chaotic system, but we all have a role to play, right? And so we have to realize and understand that going forward with Indigenous Peoples Day, with recognizing all of the things that have been done due to the doctrine of discovery and the manifest destiny and all of these things that have come into this world. And, a lot of it not by divine creation. And it is a challenge for us every day to move forward and to see how we're going to reshape this new world and this new place that's seemingly we're going to have to build in order for us to go on. There's another story too that, Six Nations, the Iroquois people, we like to think about. We talk about 7 generations, right? And the way I was taught it, again, it can vary, but the way I was taught 7 generations by an elder friend of mine of the Onondaga people is that we stand actually in the middle right now. We stand at the gap or that pivot point you hear people talk about. We look back at the ancestors. We are the 7th generation of our ancestors' dream, of their desire for us to continue on, right? I mean, we continued on we're still here. We're still here despite boarding schools, residential schools, missions, wars, famine, disease. We're still here as a people, remembering what stories we have left, okay, and remembering what ceremonies we have left. And then also developing new ways and new ceremonies, because we are a living culture. We are a living people. We are not people of the past. We're not history books and people that are in museums and archaeological digs. We are living people. That ancestral DNA and memory is in my body, going way back to the first ones that walked on the Piedmont valleys of Eastern North Carolina and wherever else they came from, across the Great Lakes and across the plains, which is now the plains and the mountains, down to where we are now. It's a beautiful story. And so we think about these things on how we are to move forward today. And Indigenous Peoples Day, again, American Indian Heritage Month, soon to come up in November. And we think about the things like, like I said, the boarding schools, the mission schools, the residential schools. We also think about forced assimilation, and we think about disenfranchising and, all of the things that we've had to deal with, but we are still here. And we remember these teachings the best that we can. And we put forth these things in a good way. And we always remember where we stand in the speck of, we're just a tiny speck of creation, right? We're not larger than this place. We don't have dominion over this place, So standing in the 7th generation, and at this point now, it is my duty to look forward for the next 7 generations, right? What I do now and how I speak now and how I teach the young people that I come in contact with now and how I live my life now is important for the next 7 generations to come. That these stories and these songs and these prayers and these ceremonies and these ways will continue on. Our sacred medicines will continue to grow and continue to bring healing to our people, right? And that we can teach others to walk in this way and teach others this way of how we learned from the animals. We learned from our brothers and relatives on how to live. We were an observant people, right? We didn't come with a mindset of, I will control you and dominate you, and you must look up to me. We saw everyone as equals. Again, going back to my original story with the water spider, right? Everyone has a role. Everyone is important. No one is lesser. No one is greater, right? We have to remember that. And we have to, carry that every day. Not something that we just take on once a month or take on once a week or take on Sunday. No, this is an everyday way of life. This is the way we've been taught, and, I hope my story and my inspirational talk, or whatever you want to call it, my sharing has brought some light and maybe even sparked some questions, right? Because right now, we're dealing with a time where things are being unearthed and voices are coming from the past, and things are being heard, and you know, it's really it's heartbreaking in a way, but it also I like to think of things as an opportunity, right? Like to always try to think of things that happen to me could either do one of two things to me. It could either wound me or it can make me better, right? I can either become wounded or become wiser, right? So I look at that, but that's a duality of a choice that each human being has to make within themselves. They have to raise their level of consciousness to understand these things. If they are not there yet, they just aren't there yet, right? And that's just how it will be. You know, everyone can't be on the same page, unfortunately. I wish we all could, or be at a higher level. But we have to love those that aren't there yet and love those that are further along in their journey of spiritual consciousness and understanding. And we just, you know, we try to do the best that we can, right? So I don't know if that helped any, or I hope that it did. I hope that you find yourself listening to these words and thinking, not listening so much to me and how my diction is and how maybe I sound country or urban. I don't know, sound like I'm from New Orleans. Who knows how I sound, but I hope you listen to the spirit of my words and let them resonate in your mind and in your heart, and more importantly, in your consciousness, because the consciousness is the gap between your mind and your body. And your consciousness is much older and deeper than we understand right now.